Welcome to today's edition of the IntoTexas AI podcast. It's your look at AI news and trends impacting Texas. I'm your host, Shannon Ballou. Let's get started. Hi, welcome to today's episode of the IntoTexas AI podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Ballou. Let's get started. Today, we're recapping some of the top AI headlines for Texas this week. And I'll have to say, the Texas conversation with AI definitely continues to expand beyond just software and job cuts. Now we're really starting to see headlines around hardware, infrastructure, and some state-backed investment at scale. So let's start with one story that's a clear example of this shift. AOI and Texas going deeper into AI hardware. For that, we're going to start in Sugar Land, Texas, where Applied Optoelectronics Inc., or AOI, announced that they were awarded roughly $20.9 million from the Texas Semiconductor Innovation Fund. Now, the funding will go toward the company's expansion in its manufacturing footprint, which is just outside of Houston. AOI produces optical networking components. Those are the high-speed transceivers that move massive amounts of data inside of AI data centers. So in simple terms, no transceivers, no data flow. No data flow, no AI at scale. Well, this is truly the plumbing of AI. And once again, Texas is investing directly in it. The expansion is expected to drive nearly $279 million in total investment and create about 500 jobs. And this follows an earlier announcement from the company that they received a new $71 million order for data center transceivers from one of its major hyperscale customers. Now, that marks total orders from that same customer of around $124 million. And the company said it's expected to deliver all the orders by the end of 2026. So talk about deals that support economic development. Again, Texas is placing another bet on owning part of the AI infrastructure stack. Well, speaking of infrastructure stack, let's talk about Nvidia and the compute layer. So for that, we're going to zoom on out to North Texas for some news this week, where Nvidia secured at least $23 million in incentives and tax abatements from Irving. It's part of its continued expansion there. Now, this was approved by the Irving City Council, and the deal requires several things, including Nvidia to keep a minimum taxable property value of around $782.5 million, and it must occupy its facility for at least a decade. There's some other requirements in there, but this is the highlight. And you have to think about this, right? With Nvidia's market cap hovering at only around $5 trillion. Well, I'm glad that Irving could give them a hand up. Look, in all seriousness, Nvidia's dominance in AI is undisputed, and the deal certainly positions Irving and North Texas as a key node in the AI supply chain. Because if we think about AOI representing data movement, well, then Nvidia certainly represents data processing. You put those together and the strategy becomes increasingly clear. Texas, again, it's continuing to assemble all the pieces of the AI stack. You've got compute from Nvidia, you've got connectivity from AOI, and then, of course, you have the data centers where we've seen expansion across the entire state. And this is how ecosystems are formed. Well, let's go to a little bit of a different topic and talk about Waymo and some of the edge cases of autonomy. For that, we're going to take a turn and head down to San Antonio, where unfortunately the Waymo's robotaxi rollout hit a pause this week after a vehicle was swept away in floodwaters. Sounds funny, but fortunately, no one was hurt. This was really serious, but there were no passengers in the vehicle, so everything was okay from that standpoint. But it does point to another clear lesson when we talk about autonomous vehicles and AI, right? AI systems don't break in ideal operating conditions, they break in real world complexity. So this is where autonomy gets tested in cases like this week where there are really serious flooding conditions, right? We need to understand how the vehicles are going to respond in those types of conditions, just like we need to do the best we can as humans to respond correctly in these conditions. And this is where we want to see the cars tested and really help improving the safety of their operations. Now, by the way, if you'd like to take a closer look at how Texas is truly test driving the autonomous vehicle market in the US, please check out one of our earlier IntoTexas AI podcasts where we do a much deeper dive on what's happening and the role that Texas is playing in that, including safety conditions and governance as part of it. All right, well, speaking of physical AI, it is showing up all across Texas. So, for our final news headline, we're going to go over to Buda, Texas, and talk about a company called TerraFirma. They're an AI and robotics company, and they just relocated their headquarters from Austin to Buda. It's an effort to scale its operations. The company was founded by two prior SpaceX engineers, and its focus is really on automating heavy civil construction, so enabling equipment to be operated remotely with fewer humans. That may sound niche, but it points to one of the most important next waves in AI. Systems that don't just generate text or images, but actually interact with the physical world. Oh, and did we mention that one of the company's ultimate goals is to build the infrastructure that will help us one day live on Mars? Not too shabby. Well, companies like TerraFirma show how AI can really change the way we work on Earth and beyond. And not only in offices, but also on job sites and vehicles and across industrial operations. And this is where AI gets very tangible. And in Texas, where we know industries like energy, construction, agriculture, logistics, they dominate. So a shift like this has the potential to be truly massive. Well, one fun side note, back to Terra Firma, its former headquarters that was based in Austin had a nickname. It was called the Robot Ranch. So we had to wonder, what would a new nickname in Buda potentially look like? For that, I asked my own AI assistant, and here's some of the suggestions that I got back. How about Bot Barn? Or maybe Buda Bunker? Or how about Buda Bots? Or my personal favorite, Bot Base Camp. Well, maybe we'll just leave the naming of headquarters to the humans. And that really wraps up the week in news for us. So, what's the takeaway? Again, Texas is positioning itself as more than just an AI adopter. It is truly trying to become an AI builder. And can Texas do the heavy lifting that's required to continue to connect all the pieces from compute and connectivity to infrastructure and workforce? Well, we continue to bet yes. That's it for this episode of IntoTexas AI. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you'd like to get more insights on how AI is reshaping Texas, then I invite you to listen, share, and of course, subscribe. I'm Shannon Ballou. See you next time.